Welcome to the Education Scotland podcast. In every episode, we are joined by teachers, professionals and experts to unpack some of the big questions and topics facing the education sector in Scotland. Stay informed with the latest on education in Scotland by subscribing to our podcast.
Well, hello everyone and welcome to this Education Scotland podcast. My name's Ollie Bray and I am one of the strategic directors at Education Scotland, and this is the next instalment of our curriculum improvement cycle mini podcast series, where we've been exploring a wide variety of cross-curricular themes. Hopefully you've had a chance to listen to some of the other podcasts in the series, but if you've not, you can watch them on YouTube or you can listen to them whenever you get your podcasts from. But today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by two people that I know really, really well. Senior Education Officer Klaus Mayer, and also we've got a special guest today because normally we just do these podcasts with people from Education Scotland, but I'm also really, really pleased that we've got James Russell joining us today. And James is the Senior Director of Transformation at Skills Development Scotland. So welcome, James, and welcome, Klaus.
Hey, Ollie, good to be here. Thank you for letting me join.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really looking forward to the discussion over the next little while, because careers and careers education, we know this is something which is really, really important. It comes up a lot. I'm sure that we'll get onto this later, but it's certainly something that in all of our engagement with children and young people, it's something that they mention, as well, whether they call it careers, whether they call it employability, whether they call it jobs. I know that these are all sort of slightly different things, but these are just like really, really, important topics. Klaus, I wonder if we maybe start with you. Is that right? I'm sorry to sort of put you on the spot, but one of the things that we've been doing across this sort of podcast series, as we've been thinking about these cross-curricular themes, is that we've been starting off by basically kind of saying, well, what is this thing that you've been exploring? Because again, I suppose when we think about careers education, the term careers education can mean different things to different people, whether that's parents or teachers or careers coaches or children, young people themselves. So how would you describe careers education in the context of this work?
Yeah, thanks very much for the invite, Ollie. Fabulous to talk about career education. As you say, a really important topic, not just from our perspective, but also from young people's perspective, parents and so on. So you're absolutely right. This is quite a complex and wide sort of spread topic. So career education is really just an umbrella term, isn't it? That subsumes a great many educational aspects that you've just outlined. But in essence, what we want to prepare young people for their future pathways in lives and predominantly, of course, for the world of work, not exclusively, but that's the focus. So career education is multifaceted, as you pointed out, and it manifests itself in a wide variety of different ways. That can be anything from a sort of a lesson connector where practitioners talk about what their subjects matter is in relation to the world of work, or it can be specific stuff like CV writing or careers talks by employers, all the way to work-related projects in schools, work-based learning, work placements, or technical vocational qualifications. Foundation apprenticeships would be a really nice example of that. So for me, that is the kind of broader context we're talking towards here. But I think it's really important, you made that point, Ollie, that the involvement in career education is not just a couple of people here and there. It's not just a careers advisor. It's actually everyone in education. And for us to make the connections for young people collectively, I think is really important. And what I mean by that is from early years, primary, secondary, college, all the way through, right? And the careers and the CLD colleagues and the employers, the parents, and young people themselves as well as peer educators, that influence each other with a wise, knowledgeable and informed sort of base. We are quite fortunate in Scotland, aren't we? James and Ollie, we've been on the sort of journey of education quite a way well, but the DYW programme, the Developing the Young Workforce Strategy, has now been in place for 10 years. So a lot of what we're discussing here has also formally manifested itself in that kind of wider context. That's brilliant. And of course, it's fair to say that career education has actually been part of the curriculum DNA for a very long time. Is this the time for us now to come in and capitalize on that and actually sharpen this? I think so. And as you said, it's young people that actually demand that, and they want more clarity around it.
Thanks, Klaus. I mean, there's loads there. Like just as you were sort of reeling off all of those sorts of things, we start to understand what a kind of complex landscape it is. James, I'm just wondering if you've got anything you want to add to that, or maybe you would want to just spend 30 seconds or so just talking about SDS's role, like within that space. I mean, you're somebody that's seeped in this, seeped in this work. Everything you do is to do with careers, really.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I think Klaus has given a great descriptor. And when you talk about all of those things, it can feel quite complex or overwhelming. But I think the beauty of all of this is about collaboration, the way we're doing this work, embedding it within the curriculum improvement cycle, so that the learner doesn't see that complexity, but what they feel, I guess, is that the range of all of those experiences and interventions and touch points and interactions with practitioners or professionals enable them to fundamentally make a well-informed decision about what they do next. And yes, this is absolutely about preparing for the long term, but ultimately the important decision for a learner is going to be the one that they need to make now. Mm-hmm. So we need to prepare them for that, but hopefully ensure that that's a sustainable set of tools, resources, skills, competencies that they've got in order to be able to make those decisions over the long term. So it's no easy task to do that, but I think the way in which we're doing it in Scotland, to Klaus's point, is unique, that we have great collaboration across those partners and that we find our space and the uniqueness that we all bring to our learners' experience and journey.
Brilliant. Thanks, James. And you've started to touch a little bit on my next question now. A little bit. This is a really, really good sort of lead in around that. And I suppose, Klaus, maybe you want to kick off with the first one here, but I absolutely know that James will have something else to say, about this as well. Is that, why is this important in the context of the curriculum improvement cycle? Do you think why is it important now that we go back and we look at careers education again? Because as you've already suggested, like we've had careers education for a long period of time, and it's not that we're not doing anything wrong. Like it's always an area which is very, very highly evaluated both by young people and by others. So why this? Why now? I suppose is my question.
That's a good question, but you said something very important there. The young people actually, they tell us that they want clarity. And I don't know if that's a sign of the times just now, that things have just got a little bit more complex around careers. So certainly we know from studies done internationally as well, that young people find it increasingly challenging to actually identify, navigate the career path for the future. So I think we owe them it to bring a bit of clarity to it. And I like the way you position that, Ollie. I think we've got an opportunity here as we look at the curriculum from different angles and in a fresh way, to try and shine a new light on this and maybe bring a bit more sharpness and clarity to it, what we actually mean by this now collectively. And that's something that the group actually, James, you'll remember that they've identified these kind of themes. We'll probably come back to that later on. But for me, why is it crucial now? Now, certainly from the discussions we had with young people, it's really important for them to get a better understanding of the opportunities and challenges that are currently around. And that means in a very rapidly changing labour market and global economy that we see at the moment, which creates a bit of uncertainty. For them to understand their knowledge and the skills and the attributes that they can bring to this. What's required for me to thrive here in the future? I think we need to teach that, and we need to empower young people with that, and also to let them explore their individual strengths and their aspirations and their visions of what's possible for them in the future, because not everything is mapped out at the moment. See, if you have somebody starting in primary 2, I would predict that actually when they leave school and enter that kind of transition phase into the next stage of their pathways, the labour market will have changed yet again. So how do we prepare young people for that? For me, that's a crucial question we need to tackle. But yeah, so important topic. Young people want to know about it. The statistics we've seen from the OECD was there's a bit of an angst around that. I think we need to bring calmness and clarity into the vision to that to alleviate some of these issues.
Thanks, Klaus. And I'm keen to come back and maybe find out a little bit more about what some of the children, young people, talked about when you were out about in school, sort of testing some of this work. But James, if it's okay, I think this would just be a really, really good sort of place to sort of bring you in, if that's okay. So obviously we've obviously been working very, very closely with you and your team through the work of the curriculum improvement cycle. But I mean, as I've always hinted in before, I mean, you live and breathe, careers education around that. So and that's in your current role, but also previous roles that you've had, within Skills Development Scotland as well. So maybe just sort of tell us a little bit about that and how that all kind of fits together.
Yeah, listen, I guess part of this set in the context of, SDS is the National Skills Agency, so it's got kind of three distinct functions currently. Obviously, we're in a space of reform right across the public sector. But one of them is about the provision of labour market intelligence and insights. So when we're talking about that world that's changing all the time and, being able to forecast or predict changes in Scotland's economy and the type of skills that employers and industry need, where those growth opportunities exist and how jobs and occupations are changing, that fundamentally becomes really important for the whole system. Yes, for our learners, but also the practitioners, being able to keep themselves aware of that. So doing things like professional learning into the teaching practitioner networks and helping them understand the world of work so that they can then help the young people understand that as well in the work that they're undertaking on a day-to-day basis. Klaus mentioned foundation apprenticeships earlier on, so Skills Development Scotland currently does the provision of foundation apprenticeships and modern apprenticeships in a kind of post-school setting. So the ability to be able to embed that kind of industry experience, classroom teaching, potentially with a kind of college partner around the table, but getting the mentoring and support and being able to experience a particular job or sector, even if it leads to you going, well, I like these things, but it's not for me. That's a really important career decision to make. So all decisions are important. And then finally is a national delivery of career information, advice and guidance across Scotland. So we are, our advisors are based in every secondary school in Scotland, as you know, and work really closely with the school leadership team, guidance and pastoral support teams around how we bring that kind of integration and alignment of what a careers advisor might do versus what goes on in the curriculum. And that plays to, I guess, the DYW piece, the introduction of the career education standard as part of the DYW strategy. And we've done a lot of great work. Schools, practitioners, careers advisors have made huge amounts of progress. But back to that point there that Klaus made and the question you asked him, the world is changing so rapidly now. The context, which is either societal or economic or environmental, creates a really different dimension at a kind of individual level as they work their way through the world in which they operate and how they fit into that. And this, with the reform of the whole public sector, the curriculum improvement cycle is one really important part of it. But we've got a great opportunity when all those other parts of the public sector are starting to change and reform, that we can really kind of embed this into the fabric of what we do in Scotland. And that's a prize, I guess, for everything.
That's great around all that. And it's you said a couple of interesting things that really resonated with me. One of the things is, when those conversations are going on with young people, where they get the information, or they have the discussion and they decide actually that's not for me, and actually how that is probably even more important than finding the thing that is for them eventually, around that, because we all know, and all of the the data shows us is that moving forward, probably young people will have many different careers and different types of careers, as well. And the other bit that I was thinking about there, when we're thinking about obviously our kind of like 3 to 18 curriculum, around that, is that young people coming into the system now are probably going to be entering employment in like 2040, so like that. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? When we think about exponentially, like how much the world has moved on and changed, particularly since COVID. It really is interesting. Sorry, Klaus, come on in. Yeah, you.
No,
like
do you know, Ollie, the really important points, and I wonder how we future-proof Scottish education in its totality around this, because education is not an entity in itself. It's about, enabling young people and providing their kind of the visions and the capabilities for the future. How do we do this? And James, you made, I think, a really good point. I don't think education in the future can work in isolation any longer. I can't afford it because of the things changing so rapidly. So why not working with employers who kind of bring the latest with you? Why not bringing people around that whole agenda to inject, new energy into our learning and the realism? We know it yields a lot of power, this contextualized learning. I think that for me, there are some really essential bits in there that kind of career education can have the key to open doors, at least, if not be the door for that. But yeah, so exciting times. I think absolutely right. Looking into the future, very future-oriented set of topic.
One of the things that you said there, Klaus, again, that sort of links in maybe to my next question, because you talked about partnership there and doing things differently, and and throughout this whole piece of work, which has been going on for about a year now, we've tried to make the process different. Like, that's been a key part of what we've done, and we've been exploring careers education to sort of try and develop these key, or sometimes we call them kind of big ideas around that. We've done that in partnership with SDS and James, and his team. We've had a combination of academics, educators, and partners like in the room around that. Like, it's felt like a really sort of powerful thing. And I can speak firsthand about the careers part of it, because I was lucky enough to come along to the very, very first session that you ran, on careers. That was one of the ones where I think I sort of said a few words just at the beginning. But what are the other sort of themes that have been coming out of that work then, Klaus, as you've progressed over the last 12 months?
Yeah, great. I want to echo that. This only worked so well because it was such a good partnership between SDS and ourselves in that. So I think we need to highlight that. And that's really back to the point I made earlier on, wasn't it? About partnerships and how we make that is a model. It worked. You're right. The key themes emerging from that, James, keep me right on this. But essentially, when we divvied it down, we came up with three key aspects. One was the importance of young people themselves within society, to allow them to be self-aware, see their interests, see their strengths, see their superpowers, whatever you want to call it, whatever drives them in life. Talk about the values that they bring to this and the skills that they need around it. So how about me as a learner in society? We need to open the doors for them to position themselves in that thinking space and allow to explore. The second aspect was pathways and opportunities. So in other words, what kind of trajectories can be built with and around the young people's wishes and hopes and labour market and so on? And what are the opportunities that present themselves that we can show young people? So we need to let them explore. We need to teach them how to plan. We need experiential learning in the curriculum. Right, exposition to these kind of future pathways. And I think we also need to celebrate their own personal success in that. What do I bring? My personal achievement in this. That's a strength if we can harness that. And the third aspect was the labour market and the workplace in itself. James, you already mentioned the labour market information. We need to permeate that into the system. What's around me as a learner? How do I understand my labour market and the opportunities? I think one aspect of that is to instill a sense of adaptability and management of change for the future that's so rapidly happening. And another aspect, James, you remember they talked about rights and responsibilities. I think that's really important as well. When we go forward, labour market is changing, but what do I as a person contribute to that agenda, and talking about my responsibilities to foster something, but also the rights I have to protect myself in all of these changes. So these were the three key themes that I saw coming through, James. I don't know if there's anything you were thinking from your point of view.
That covers it. I try and distill this down and kind of go, what does the world look like who am I and what's my contribution to it and what rights have I got in that world, and then what opportunities do I have to take forward the steps towards the choices that I would like to make in the future. So those 3 pillars, I think being able to distill that down from a diverse group of stakeholders, you know, academic perspectives, practitioner perspectives and everything in between, it's been brilliant to get people coalescing around the kind of core and critical things that need to exist within the curriculum.
Has there been anything, an open question to both of you, but is there is there anything that you sort of found surprising about the work maybe not that you weren't expecting to hear, but just how passionate like certain groups of people were about individual aspects of it, around that? Is there anything that came through that you thought, oh, wasn't expecting that?
From my perspective, and James, please come in on this, but from my perspective, what was really lovely to see, and I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised about it, but was the consensus around all of this. We pretty quickly came to the point where people started to agree and see what James just outlined there around these 3 pillars. And it wasn't difficult. There wasn't anyone who was saying, no way I would do that. That was really warming and heartening. And there was a common sense approach. I think a lot of people used the experiential sort of aspects of it, whether it was personal from their children or whether they helped somebody on a careers journey. And that just flowed in naturally. That was really nice to see. But the power of fusing that in these kind of processes was for me really, really powerful. That was a lesson learned for life, how this all came together and really created that energy in the middle.
Yeah, totally. Listen, Klaus, I would agree with that. And Ollie, maybe a kind of different perspective from my side. The commitment to learners in Scotland is unwavering, right? It always has been, no matter what state we're in, where societal, economic, or otherwise. And that remains in this room. When you have that kind of diversity of perspective and the willingness for it to be something different from what we've done, to recognise the circumstances in which we're in, and people trying to find what that difference looks like, that whether it's surprising or otherwise, it's probably quite inspiring actually that they've went, okay, well, we do this particularly well, but we know that doesn't fit everybody. In the ability to kind of find a way that says, how do we get this to be, structurally unavoidable? Everyone gets access to this type of activity in their curriculum. There's a real drive and motivation despite the challenges that the sector are facing. And I think that's pretty special, actually.
Yeah, that's great. And there was just, as I say, I was along at the first session, and I know the sessions just got better and better from there. But there was a massive amount of energy in the room, wasn't there? There really was a massive amount of energy in the room, and feeding off each other's energy as well. It was really, quite a special experience to be part of, and a privilege to observe. A couple more questions then guys, if that's okay, and then we better wrap up. And as you know, all of us could talk for a long time about this because we're kind of very, very, we're very, very invested in the work. But I suppose we've talked a little bit about what careers education is and the national picture now and some of that journey that we've been on. But where are we going next with this? Around this, and I suppose there's almost 2 parts to this question. It's where are we going next with this in terms of the curriculum improvement cycle? But where are we? Where are we going next with kind of careers education? In Scotland, as well.
For me, we've done the groundwork, we've done the discussions, we've got to these key points. There is the important bit for me is here, how do we now capitalize on this, on the knowledge and all of this that we have? How do we weave this constructively together? And picking up on what James said at the very beginning of the talk, that we organically weave it into the curriculum as it is. Not a bolt-on, not something that somebody has to do as an extra, not something that becomes burdensome and complicated, but how do we weave that strand nicely through that? That for me is the challenge that we now sit with. And I think there are good models and ideas out there, but weaving that into a tapestry together with all the other cross-cutting themes, Ollie, that you referred to and other people spoke about, is the challenge, so that it doesn't become an overly inflated aspect of the career, but it becomes something that really is rich and that people are clear about what we mean and how it manifests itself in their particular context. That for me is the challenge, something that the group is keen to explore. James, you remember we had these conversations with them, and they are ready. They said, "Oh, we're up for that. We like to now inject the sense and the themes and all that needs to come around it." So for me, that's where I see it going next.
Yeah, I mean, we talk importantly for the learner's experience to feel that it's universally accessible to them through, I love the tapestry comment. I think that's a great way to kind of describe it. But even from a teacher's perspective and a practitioner's, that they're all clear about their roles and responsibilities, that we've all got something to contribute to this, and that the construct of the curriculum framework makes that quite seamless, I guess. And not these kind of, right, it's this part over here and it's that part over there, and actually it just becomes quite natural to bring, the labour market to life in a maths subject or some other example like that. I think that's a task, which is not an easy one, but we'll get there.
And it feels like, and I mean, you're right, it's not an easy one, but it feels like we've got a bunch of people that are really willing to sort of lean into that around that, which is just great, folks. Constant time. So last question, and this I suppose is also a bit of a test to see whether you've listened to any other podcasts in the series, because I always ask this last question for everyone. So it's probably the only question that you could prepare for, around that. And the question is, it's open ended, I suppose, but the question is, if we get this right, what's that going to mean for children and young people in Scotland?
Oh, wow. Now that's an opening. Do you know what? It will make a massive difference. It will pay multiple dividends, both educationally, I believe, as well as economically. I mean, call me naive, but I often ask probationers, why is education important? Why do we do what we do? And invariably, it's yes, it is about pursuit of learning and all the rest of it in pedagogy, but isn't that at the end of the day to try and prepare young people for their pathways and to get on in life? So for me, this is no longer a luxury, no longer a bit on the side. This is actually core to where we need to be with young people and allow them to connect all the bits of learning into something that is a package that continues to journey with them through their life. So I think it's actually quite paramount, this whole topic. I don't know, am I over egging this, or James? I don't know. I see it as quite essential, actually.
I don't think you are. I think it has to be ambitious. It has to be something that inspires people to want to be part of it. And I guess that's the way in which everybody's entering into this. I would share that ambition, right? I mean, this fundamentally is about helping every learner in Scotland to know that they've got an important part to play in their own future and in the future of Scotland, and whatever that might be, work, learning, volunteer or otherwise. And we've all, I guess, got a responsibility to be able to help them realise that.
So just a massive thanks to both of you for massive thanks to both of you for everything in the last sort of like 30 minutes, but everything that you've both done in the last year. So thanks for your enthusiasm, and James, just a special call out to yourself and the team at SDS, because from an Education Scotland perspective, this has genuinely felt like a true partnership, and it's in a better place, like through your involvement as well, folks. that is the end, of our sort of mini podcast on careers education. If you have enjoyed this, and hopefully that you have, and you've not listened to the other mini podcasts in this series, then please feel free to check them out. You can watch them on the Education Scotland YouTube channel, or you can just look for Education Scotland on all good podcast provider platforms. And we've got one last podcast to go in this series, and we will be putting that out soon. James, Klaus, thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you very much.
Bye, see you later.
Okay. See you later, folks.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for notification of when a new episode is published. If there is a topic you would like to hear featured on this podcast, get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on our social media channels for all the latest news from Education Scotland. Education Scotland is a Scottish Government executive agency charged with supporting quality and improvement in Scottish education.